ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. We are reading from the book Meditation and Spiritual Life by Swami Yatiswarananda. We are commencing chapter 31 titled Spiritual Unfoldment. First section, Body, Mind and Spirit. In order to understand the mystery of spiritual unfoldment, it is necessary that we be acquainted with our true nature and the states of consciousness we pass through in life. Our true nature is divine, that is, Brahman is our true self. This true self is called the Atman, but in reality it is non-different from Brahman, the infinite spirit. Such is the experience of the spiritually illumined souls. Ignorance covers this true nature. Through ignorance we feel that we are separate from God and that we are only finite mortal beings. Ignorance is like a strong drink. It makes one forget oneself and creates fantasies. First it hides our true nature and then makes us identify ourselves with what we are not. Through ignorance, the true self becomes identified with the body, the senses, the mind, and there is created a fantasy of the ego. As a result, we feel we have two kinds of body, the physical or gross and the mental or subtle. Through introspection, we can find that we have a still subtler body called the causal body. Beyond all these three is the Atman, our true self. Further, we are caught in three states of consciousness. The waking state, in which consciousness is identified with the physical body and we are conscious of the physical world. The dream state, in which consciousness is identified with the subtle body and we live in a dream world created by our own mental impressions. The deep sleep state, in which consciousness is identified with our causal body, which is in tune with a causal world and the mind ceases to function. Men of knowledge tell us that beyond these three states, there is the state of transcendental consciousness, also called turiya, in which one regains one's true spiritual nature. The attainment of this highest state of pure consciousness, when the soul realizes that it is nothing but the infinite spirit, does not, however, take place all of a sudden. In the case of the vast majority of spiritual aspirants, this is a gradual process. The attainment of spiritual consciousness takes the form of a gradual unfoldment. There are various stages through which the aspirant passes before he attains the fullest illumination. It is the spiritual unfoldment that we are going to discuss now. In our conscious state, we are identified with the physical body. We then think we are short or tall, young or old, fair or dark. When we identify ourselves with the mind, we experience pain or pleasure, misery or happiness. When identified with the ego, we think, quote, I am the doer, I am bound or free, unquote. We must get rid of our ignorance and realize our true spiritual nature. We cannot do this by simply wishing. If wishes were horses, everybody would ride. We have hypnotized ourselves and must get ourselves dehypnotized. How to do this? We must construct our old self. We must break all bad habits of thinking, feeling and acting, form good moral habits and guide our thoughts, emotions and actions by the spiritual ideal. Then we become purer. As the mind becomes pure as a result of moral disciplines, prayer, repetition of the divine name, and meditation, we develop the power of introspection. We then discover within ourselves various centers of consciousness, the quote, secret stairs, unquote, of the mystics, a secret elevator with various landing stages connected with different planes of consciousness. In the Tantras, each of these centers is called a chakra. We all know how our thoughts, feelings and activities change with the change of our moods. These moods have something to do with the centers of consciousness with which we may be connected at particular times. Schopenhauer says that sex becomes the focus of the will as the child grows into the youth. One then lives in a new world of thoughts, emotions, and actions, all dominated by sex. We feel the stomach when we are very hungry. We feel the heart when we are swayed by deep emotions. We feel the point between the eyebrows when our thoughts are clear and luminous. This means two things. One, we have various centers of consciousness in us. Secondly, we are constantly moving from one center to another. Here we have referred only to physical centers. Apart from these centers connected with our physical existence, there are higher centers of spiritual awareness. They are not visible to the eye, nor can they be understood by the ordinary mind. They are subtle spiritual centers which can be known only by advanced yogis. Further, according to Tantras, there are 7 such centers of consciousness called the chakras. It is necessary for us to get a clear conception of the various centers of consciousness and their functions. In describing supersensuous things, sometimes we are forced to use the language of the physical. This is what is done in describing the Kundalini, literally the coiled up, sometimes called the serpent power, the spiritual power latent in man. It is likened to a coiled up snake lying asleep at the base of the spine. Next section, the Sushumna, the Ida, and the Pingala. Kundalini, or the coiled up power, is consciousness in its creative aspect as power. In yogic language, it lies asleep, coiled up, in the region corresponding to the base of the spine. In the spiritually awakened, the power flows through the spiritual channel called Sushumna. This spiritual channel exists side by side with 2 other channels called Ida and Pingala. These are said to exist to the left and right of the spinal column, while the Sushumna is in the center. Picture 3 channels having their junction at the basic or the lowest center. The central one is the spiritual channel, while the other 2 are connected with man's ordinary physical and psychical life. In an average man, the energy that gathers at the junction of the channels flows only to the 2 side ones, but not to the central channel. So all energy is sidetracked and expresses itself in ordinary worldly thoughts, feelings, and activities. Each center is a point of contact between the individual and the cosmic on a particular plane of consciousness. The first 3 centers from the bottom up are connected with the animal life of man, like eating, drinking, sense enjoyment, and sex pleasures. Man's first spiritual awakening comes when his consciousness rises to the center in the heart. It is there that he discovers his soul. The centers of consciousness are sometimes described in terms of physical plexuses and ganglia with which they are connected, but they must not be identified with them. As Sir John Woodroffe remarks in his famous book, The Serpent Power, these lotuses or centers of consciousness are extremely subtle centers which vitalize and control the gross bodily tracts indicated by the various regions of the vertebral column and the ganglia, plexuses, nerves, arteries, and the organs situated in those respective regions. Next section, chakras or centers of consciousness. If we concentrate on the subtle body, which permeates the physical body, we shall have a clear conception of our mental and emotional nature and can learn to control not only our emotional nature, but also our senses and physical organs. Our teachers tell us that just as our physical body has hidden parts and processes which we do not see, of whose functions we may not be aware, so there are unconscious and superconscious layers of our mind. Many of our deep-rooted desires and passions lie in the unconscious. Those must be discovered and uprooted if progress in spiritual life is to be achieved. The superconscious is the plane of spiritual experience and bliss. The causal, subtle, and gross bodies have several points of contact. These points are the chakras already referred to, lying along the region of the spine between the head and the base of the spine. The, the spirit, the mind, and the body meet at these junctions and influence one another. Information constantly passes between all these three bodies through these chakras. But in ordinary people, only the lower three chakras are active, the higher ones lie dormant. These higher centers can be roused by certain yogic disciplines, and each center, when activated, reveals a particular state of consciousness. It is owing to this connection between the body and the mind that the two act and react on each other. We know that thoughts and emotions not only affect the body, but can also transform it. Selfish animal thoughts and emotions influence the lower centers of consciousness connected with the animal life of man. Higher thoughts and emotions react on higher centers. There are three separate states of being in every one of us: tamas, rajas, and sattva, as already mentioned. Tamas is a state of laziness and sense gratification without struggling for higher life. The state of rajas is the life of struggle between lower and higher natures. Tamas and rajas are associated with the lower chakras or centers. The higher centers are associated with sattva. In sattva, the higher nature of consciousness has gained ascendancy, but the evil has not yet been transmuted. Seeds of evil growth lie in the unconscious. They cannot be dug out and thrown away, but they can be burnt with the life of spiritual experience. Sushumna becomes active only when we are in the state of sattva. The psychic forces working in the personality must become harmonious. When the mind is overactive or restless, we can be sure that a good deal of our psychic energy is getting sidetracked. When we allow ourselves to be overactive, restless, angry, melancholic, or too jovial and careless, we lose so much of our psychic energy. Raising the Kundalini is not easy as some people think. It needs tremendous willpower and discipline. In the beginning, it is difficult to force the psychic energy along the Sushumna by the exercise of willpower alone. So to begin with, we're asked to concentrate the mind on an image of the Lord in the heart center. Through devotion to the Lord, we try to concentrate the mind at the heart. All forms of dissipation of energy are checked, and the heart becomes the center of our consciousness. When we do all this through the grace of the Lord, the Kundalini awakens. At first, we begin with imaginations about the lotus, the light, the form of the deity, etc. But when our spiritual consciousness awakens, we realize the truth behind these imaginations. We then find that we have been imagining till then about things which really exist. As long as the seeds of desire, the latent impressions of past experiences, remain in the mind, spiritual experience can never be continuous. At first, we can get only certain glimpses, but every little ray of light burns up some of the latent impressions. The highest degree of spiritual consciousness, called Nirvikalpa Samadhi, can be attained only when most of the seeds of desire have been thus destroyed. Partial experiences, temporary spiritual visions, occasional ecstasies, however good they are in themselves, cannot confer on us the highest beatitude. As long as we move in the lower planes, we are never safe. Spiritual experience alone can make God and soul realities for us. To seek the reality behind the phenomenon is the goal of religion. We usually depend on so many external objects and do not depend solely on God, who is the only reality. The unreal things have become real for us, and we have made the real thing unreal. The power to know the reality lies dormant in us. We have to awaken this power. At every chakra, we get a new experience. We realize a new aspect of reality. When the heart center awakens, one realizes oneself as the soul, the Jivatman, a luminous point of consciousness separate from body and thoughts. When Kundalini reaches the center between the eyebrows, the aspirant realizes that the Jivatman is a part of Paramatman, The soul is a part of the oversoul. Most people cannot go behind this stage.